welcome to English is Fun by Teacher Zine, your online mentor of informative tips and tutorials one click away. For today, we will be talking about the active and passive voices of the verb. But before that one, please do not forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel and hit that notification bell in order for you to receive latest updates of my videos. And do not forget to follow me on my official Facebook page. So again, for today, we will be learning the active and passive voices of the verb the easiest way possible. But before that one, why do we need this one? Why do we need to learn the voices of the verb? Alright? Now, actually, the voice is the part of the verb that tells us whether the subject is acting. When we say the subject is acting, this means that the subject is the one who is doing the action. Alright? On the other hand, it can also be the subject being acted upon. What do I mean by this? This means that the action is being done to the subject. Alright? Now, in the English language, we can actually write or express our sentences either in active or in the passive voice. But before that one, it is very important for us to know first the three major sentence parts, especially when we're talking about active and passive voices of the verb. Alright? So, what are these three major sentence parts? We have first, the subject, okay? What is a subject? The subject is the one who does the action or the one being talked about. Alright? Now, the second part is the verb, another very important part of the sentence. And what is a verb? The verb is actually the action done by the subject. Alright? And lastly, the third part is the object. What is an object? The object is the receiver of the action or the one who receives the action. So again, these three major sentence parts are very important for us to write or express our sentences either in the active voice or in the passive voice. Now, again, we have the subject being the one who does the action or the doer of the action, the one being talked about. We also have the verb, which is very important, of course, because the verb is the action done by the subject. And lastly, we have the object being the receiver of the action. Oh, by the way, take note that the object answers the question what or who, like what receives the action or who receives the action, okay? Now, I have here two sentences, and it says here that we need to compare these two sentences. The first sentence is, Teacher Ron baked that delicious cake. On the other hand, the second sentence is, that delicious cake was baked by Teacher Ron. Now, there is an underlying question. Which sentence is in the active voice or in the passive voice? Which do you think first is in the active voice? And which do you think also is in the passive voice? Can you guess? Alright, actually the first sentence is in the active voice and the second sentence is in the passive voice. But why? We will get to know later. So as I told you earlier, the first sentence in the two examples that I gave is the sentence in the active voice. Now, what is a sentence in an active voice? The active voice of the verb tells us what a person or thing does. This indicates that the subject performs the action on the object, okay? Again, the subject performs the action on the object. So the subject is the performer of the action. And we actually, remember this one, when we have this pattern that we apply in a sentence, like it should always begin with the subject and then the verb and then the object. Alright? Now, the verb here actually depends because in this case, of course, we have a lot of tenses of the verb. Alright? So the thing is that I actually put here the verb, though there is no specification like in the whether the verb will be in the past participle or in the present participle, because of course we have different tenses. But in this lesson, we are just going to dig deeper on the basic parts so that we can easily understand these two voices of the verb. Alright, now let's go back to the sentence that I gave a while ago. So we have here, Teacher Ron baked that delicious cake. Of course, I told you that there are three major parts of a sentence. So let's try to identify, alright? So first, who does the action who is this person being talked about in the sentence? Actually, that's Teacher Ran. That would mean that Teacher Ran is the subject in the sentence, okay? And then, what did Teacher Ran do? Okay? What is the action in this particular sentence? And it is actually bake, all right? That would indicate that the word bake here is the verb in the sentence. And also, Teacher Ran bake what? Alright, so again, as I told you a while ago, the object answers the question what. So we have here an underlying question, what did Teacher Ron bake? And with that, the answer is the delicious cake. That would mean that cake here is the object. Now, I underline delicious because that would indicate that delicious here is a modifier or an adjective that describes the object. However, the main object, of course, is the word cake. Alright? So I guess you're able to understand already what is an active voice of the verb. So this time we will focus also our understanding on the other voice of the verb, which is the passive voice. Okay? Now, when is a sentence in the passive voice of the verb? It says here that the passive voice of the verb tells us what is done to someone or something. Okay? So that would mean that in this case, the subject is not already found on the beginning part of the sentence. Okay? Now, in this case, the subject is being acted upon, or the subject is being acted upon by the object. Alright? Which means that there is an action done to the subject, to him, to her, or it, which indicates the subject, of course. Now, again, we can clearly say that the sentence is in the passive voice when we have this pattern wherein the sentence begins with the object, alright, and then followed by the verb, and lastly, the subject. If you notice that the subject and the object are being interchanged in this particular pattern that I gave, alright? So please remember that one. Alright, so let's go back to the two sentences that I gave a while ago. So this time we will focus on the second sentence. And the second sentence says here that the delicious cake was baked by Teacher Ran. Now, in this example, we have the original object a while ago, which is the delicious cake. Now, this time, this delicious cake is given more importance or more emphasis rather than the one who does the action, which or who is Teacher Ran. All right. Now, with that, this would indicate that delicious cake here becomes the passive subject in this sentence. That's why it is in the passive voice, or that's why this sentence is written in the passive voice. Okay? Now, remember also that when we construct the passive voice of the verb, it will follow the pattern of this be auxiliary plus the verb. Okay? Again, please take note, the be auxiliary plus the verb, wherein I think you know what are these be auxiliary verbs. You have this was, where, is, are, like that. Alright? And then added by the verb. And lastly, of course, when you put the subject on the last part of the sentence, there should always be by and then plus the subject. But this will vary also if in case the subject is really given. In that case, the subject is really important to be told in the sentence. Okay? Please remember that one. Alright, now let's have practice exercises to check your understanding of the topic. In the first question, it actually tells us here that we need to change this active voice to the passive voice. The storm destroyed the houses in the village. Can I give it a try? Right, let's see if your answer is correct, because for this one, we changed this into passive voice, and the correct answer is the houses in the village were destroyed by the storm, wherein the object here is given more emphasis. That indicates that this object here is the passive subject of the sentence, and then of course with the complete verb and also the subject or the one being talked about, which is the storm. All right, how about the second one? Now this time, can you change this sentence from the passive voice to the active voice? I'll pause for a moment and give it a try. Alright, let's see if your answer is correct. The correct answer actually is, from that passive voice, it becomes my neighbor adopted the kitten. If you got it correctly, then it's a good job for you. Alright, now this time it's your time to shine. I'll be giving you more examples and more activities for you to answer. Alright, give it a try. Let's have the first question. Now the instruction is that you need to determine first the voice of the sentence. Like if the original sentence is in the active voice or in the passive voice. And then once you are done, you need to change it from the active voice to the passive voice, or from the passive voice to the active voice. Okay? Let's have the first example, or the first question. My student gave that truly remarkable speech. Can you please tell me if it's in the active voice or in the passive voice? And can you invert it the other way around? I'll pause for a moment. Let's see if your answer is correct. Actually, for that sentence, from the original sentence, it is actually in the active voice, and we need to invert it to this way. In the passive voice, it becomes that truly remarkable speech was given by my student. If you got it correctly, good job. Now let's have the second question. Good luck. Those animals were neglected by my neighbors. Can you determine what voice of the verb the sentence has? And can you change it the other way around? I'll pause for a moment. Now let's see if your answer is correct. From the original sentence, we actually consider that one as a passive voice, of course. And in that, we can invert it by changing it to active voice, and it becomes my neighbors neglected those animals. If you got it correctly, another big thumbs up for you. Good job. Now let's have the last question, alright? Let's see if you can get this question correctly. This time, we have this sentence. For an entire day, the children painted that giant mural. Can you tell me if it's in the active voice or in the passive voice? And can you change it in the other way around? Good luck! Now let's see if your answer is correct, because from the original sentence, it is actually in the active voice. And when we change it the other way around, it becomes like this. That giant mural was painted by the children for an entire day. Or we can also say actually, for an entire day, that giant mural was painted by the children. Alright? Alright, it's reflection time. Why do you think it is important to use correctly active and passive voices of the verb in sentences? Can you think and pause for a moment? And that's a wrap of today's lesson of the active and passive voices of the verb. Now, if you want to have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, please do not hesitate to email me through the email address provided on the screen. And that's it for today. I hope you had fun and learned something, and see you on my next video. Once again, this is Teacher Ron, your online mentor of informative tips and tutorials. Goodbye!